Janguk stepped into the dining room, the warm aroma of freshly prepared food welcoming him. He took his seat quietly and looked around. The table was perfectly arranged, each dish precisely what he liked, every spice, every portion thoughtfully made. But there was one thing missing: wine. A flicker of surprise crossed his face. He turned toward the nearest maid and called her over. "Jungkook, where is Wyan? Why isn't she here?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. The maid lowered her eyes respectfully. "Maid, sir, madam went to call you. We assumed you both would return together." Jungkook didn't respond immediately. He just nodded slightly and looked back at the untouched plates in front of him. He waited for several minutes. Each tick of the clock stretched a little longer, but wine didn't return. A strange sense of uneasy began to creep into him. He stood up slowly and looked toward the maid again. "Jungkook, she is probably with the children," he said, trying to reassure himself as much as them. "Jungkook, take some food to the nursery. Make sure she eats." The maid quickly obeyed, packing a tray of carefully selected dishes and making their way to the nursery. In the nursery, the door opened softly and the maid stepped inside. The twins were asleep in their cribs, their breathing soft and rhythmic. Two maids stood quietly near them, keeping watch, but there was no sign of Wyan. The maids exchanged confused glances. "Maid 1, madam isn't here?" one of them asked gently. The others shook their heads. "Maid 2, no, she didn't come in at all this evening, not since afternoon." A strange tension settled into the room. They placed the tray down near the small table and looked around, as if one might be hiding behind the silence. Then came a soft murmur of concern. "Maid 3, where could she have gone?" "Maid 4, should we tell sir?" "Maid 1, yes, something's not right." The quiet nursery, once filled with warmth of lullabies and soft laughter, now held a chill. A question hung in the air, unanswered but heavy. Where was Wyan, and why hadn't she come back? They left the nursery and spread out across the house. Their footsteps hurried, their eyes scanning every corridor, every quiet room, and so began a quick panic. A storm was rising, but no one yet knew how much it would change. In her room, Wine lay flat on her back, motionless on the bed. Tears trickled silently from her eyes, tears she could not explain. Was it pain? Was it anger? She wasn't sure. She was very angry at herself for crying, angry that something so fragile inside her had broken. She didn't want to talk to anyone. She didn't want to see anyone. She stared blankly at the ceiling, her mind a swirling maze of emotions she could not untangle. Everything inside her felt heavy, tangled in knots that refused to loosen. Outside the house was in chaos. Maids and guards, everyone was searching for her, running through corridors, calling her name. No one thought to check the one place she had returned to, her own room, the one space where she could be alone with the edge in her chest. Finally, after what felt like forever, a maid opened the door, her breath caught at the sight of one laying still on the bed. Relieved she wasn't her, she stepped closer. "Maid, ma'am, sir is waiting for you for dinner. He's gone now. Your food is in the nursery," she said gently, almost whispering. Wine didn't react. Her eyes were open but vacant, distant. The maid's voice barely registered. After a few moments, the maid repeated herself, louder this time. Wine blinked. Her awareness turned in fragments. "Wine, I'm not hungry," she said quietly. "Take the food away." The maid hesitated. "Maid, but ma'am." "Wine, I said I'm not hungry," she repeated more firmly now. Her voice had a strange hollow edge, the maid sensed something was wrong, something deeper than missed dinner or a passing mood. But she didn't argue. She bowed slightly and left the room in silence. Night fell. The house quieted. The world dimmed. But inside one's heart, the storm had only grown. She realized suddenly that she could not sleep here, not because it wasn't her room, but because she knew Jangkook would become looking. He always did. And she didn't have the strength for that confrontation. Still, with slow, heavy steps, she forced herself to leave and walk toward their shared bedroom. She pushed the door open and entered silently. Jungkook was in the bathroom. Why didn't wait? She walked straight to the bed and lay down, turning away from his side, curling into herself as if her back could shield her from everything she didn't want to face. The sound of the bathroom door opening echoed lightly behind her. Jungkook stepped out. He paused for a moment, seeing her already in bed. Quietly he turned off the lights and lay down beside her, unaware the storm raging just inches away. A few minutes passed. The silence grew heavier. Then he reached over, his arm finding her waist. He pulled her gently into him, not saying a word, and soon he drifted into sleep, and Vine remained awake, still, silent. Tears continued to roll down her face, warm and constant. She didn't move, didn't wave them away. She just lay there in the darkness, lost in a sea of thoughts no one else could see. Two people lay in the same bed, one deep in sleep, the other drowning in quiet grief. Morning arrived. Jangkook slowly stirred awake, blinking against the soft sunlight slipping through the curtains. As he turned over, his eyes landed on Wyan, still asleep beside him. Her face was peaceful, but her eyes were sullen, the faint traces of dry tears visible under her lashes. Something about it made him pause. She looked worn, defeated. He stared for a moment longer, silently wondering what storm she might have weathered through the night. But true to his nature, Jungkook said nothing. Without waking her, he slipped out of the bed. He followed his usual routine, washed up, worked out in the home gym, finished his breakfast, got dressed. Still Wine hadn't moved. It unsettled him more than he expected, but he kept the uneasy to himself and walked out of the room. Some time later, Wan opened her eyes. She instinctively looked to the side. Jungkook was gone, dragging herself out of bed. She freshened up slowly. The weight in her chest had only grown heavier. Nothing about the day felt right. She didn't want to speak to anyone, didn't want to see anyone. A strange longing to disappear gripped her, as if she wanted to walk away from everything, this house, these relationships, this version of her life. Eventually, she made her way to the nursery. The babies were already awake and playing. They didn't cry for her like before. Maybe they had grown used to her being around now, knowing she would not vanish again. When they saw her, Tiny had reached out with joy. One picked them up one by one, holding them close, playing with them softly, trying to smile. They took their bath, had their meals, giggled and curled around until exhaustion took over and they drifted into sleep. One sat quietly by their crib, watching their peaceful faces. A maid entered gently. "Maid, ma'am, it's time for your breakfast. Everything's ready," she said with polite concern. Wine didn't even look up. "Wine, I'm not hungry. I don't want anything." Maid, but ma'am, you haven't eaten since last night. Wine, didn't I say I'm not hungry? She snapped, a little louder this time. Startled, the maid nodded quickly and stepped away in silence, leaving Wine alone with her thoughts once again. She sat in silence, eyes resting on the children, yet her mind was elsewhere, drifting in a fog she could not pull herself out of. One point of view, I wish it had all been a bad dream, a dream where I had not gotten married, a dream where I had not been forced into this strange relationship, a dream where I didn't have to live with this cold, emotionless man. Tears filled her eyes again. She didn't weep them away. She didn't need to let them fall. The hour passed quickly. Afternoon turned to evening, then to night. Wine didn't eat a single bite. She stayed in the nursery, tending to the children, watching over them like a quiet shadow. She didn't speak unless she had to. Just before Jangkook's usual return, she slipped back into their shared room and lay down. She didn't want to face him, not tonight, not like this. So she turned away from the door and closed her eyes, letting the silence stretch between them. That night, Jungkook walked into the dining room, expecting to see Wyan waiting, perhaps quietly, perhaps distant, but there nonetheless. Instead, the room was empty. He frowned slightly, confusion crossing his brows. Jungkook, where is Wyan? She is not coming tonight either, he asked. One of the maids looked hesitant before replying. Maid, we are not sure, sir, but ma'am hasn't eaten anything since last night. Jungkook's expression shifted instantly. What began as mild concern now edged into something sharper. He didn't understand. There had been no argument, no confrontation. Why was she suddenly pulling away? Without saying anything more, he stepped away from the table. Untouched dinner left behind. Jungkook, send the food to my room, he instructed curtly. The maid nodded and began preparing the trays. Jungkook followed behind them, silent. Inside the room, one was laying down on the bed. Her eyes were closed, but she wasn't asleep. She had been listening, feeling the heaviness of his footsteps, the closeness of his presence. Jungkook stepped in and stood near the bed. Jungkook, I know you're awake, he said quietly but firmly. Stop pretending, sit up. Why didn't move? His voice lower, deeper, colder. Jungkook, will you get up yourself or should I make you? Something about the edge in his voice made her open her eyes. Without a word, she sat up slowly, not meeting his gaze. Jungkook didn't speak either. He picked up the tray, scooped a small portion of food with a spoon, and gently held it out to her lips. She hesitated, but opened her mouth and accepted it. No words, just silence. Only her eyes remained fixed on his, full of quiet questions, quiet pain. Jungkook continued feeding her without a break in rhythm, and then finally he spoke. Jungkook, you didn't ask me if I had eaten. The words caught her off guard. Her lips parted slightly in surprise, but she didn't know what to say. Why, did you? She asked in a soft, uncertain voice. Jungkook, no, not yet. I will eat after feeding you, he replied. Wine looked down. She wanted to say something, anything, but the words stayed stuck in her throat. She remained silent. Once she finished, Jungkook took a few bites from the tray himself. When he was done, he placed the tray aside and got into bed without a word. Moments later, he reached out and wrapped his arm around her from behind. One's heart skipped. His warmth, so close, so sudden, it startled her, but she said nothing. She stayed facing away, her breathing steady, her body still, until Jungkook asked something. Jungkook, is something wrong? Are you upset about something? If you want, I can take you to the cafe. Wine didn't say a word. She lay there silently, unmoving. To her, Jungkook's word felt distant, unfamiliar, as if spoken by a stranger. When Jungkook didn't get any response, he saw that she had already fallen asleep. For the first time in a day, Wine slept deeply, not because all the pain had vanished, but for a moment she didn't feel quite so alone. Morning arrived with soft light filtering into the room. Wine slowly opened her eyes and turned toward the empty space beside her. Jungkook was already gone, but she wasn't surprised. He often left early without saying a word. She sat up and quickly went to freshen up for some reason. The weight in her chest didn't feel as heavy today. Something within her felt lighter, like a burden had slightly shifted. She quietly had breakfast, then made her way to the nursery. In the car, Jungkook sat silently, his eyes lost in thought. Ben, who sat in the front, glanced at his boss through the rear view mirror, observing his rare quietness but said nothing. Suddenly Jungkook broke the silence. Jungkook, Ben, what do women like? Ben almost dropped the steering wheel. Ben, sir? Jungkook, woman, what do they like? He repeated, eyes still on the road ahead. Ben fumbled, confused and nervous. Ben, well, they love surprises, definitely surprises. Why, did ma'am get mad at you, boss? Jungkook shot him a sharp glance. Ben froze, eyes forward, hands firm on the wheel. Jungkook, arrange a surprise candlelight dinner and tell someone to buy a beautiful dress for you, madam. Have it sent to the house. Ben only nodded, swallowing hard, saying nothing more. Jungkook, I want to open up to Wine about everything today. I don't want to be any misunderstanding between us. Our relationship has already gone through so many ups and downs from the very beginning. I don't want any more complications. I just want to start everything anew in a beautiful way. Hearing those words, Ben was overjoyed. Smiling brightly, he said, Ben, okay, boss, I will prepare everything perfectly. Ben noticed that his boss was staring out the window, smiling shyly to himself. It didn't take long for Ben to realize his boss had fallen in love with Madame. Seeing his boss like that made Ben really happy inside, but he didn't say a word. If he dared to comment on what he had seen, his boss might just shoot him. So, out of fear, Ben looked straight ahead, pretending he hadn't noticed a thing. At the nursery, Wine was with the children. The afternoon had slipped by unnoticed. It was time for their nap, but today none of them were falling asleep easily. She tried rocking and singing, but they remained restless. Then a maid entered. Maid, ma'am, sir said to be ready by 7 p.m. Wine looked up puzzled. Wine, why? Maid, he didn't say, just mentioned that a dress had been placed in your room for you to wear tonight. The maid existed, leaving Wine wondering. Still confused, she went to the room, and there it was, a stunning dress laid out on the bed, carefully arranged. She walked over and picked it up gently. The fabric was beautiful, soft, elegant, as if made for someone special. For the first time in what felt like weeks, one smiled softly. She had completely forgotten about the events of that night. She got ready slowly, taking her time. By the time of the clock struck 7, she looked radiant. A maid came to get her. Maid, sir is waiting downstairs. She descended the stairs slowly, her heart a strange mixture of nervous and curiosity, and there he was. Jungkook stood by the entrance watching her. He didn't blink, didn't move, just stood, staring at her as if he was seeing her for the first time. Wine blushed, looking away. Without saying a word, Jungkook extended his hand. She hesitated, then placed her in his. He tightened his grip gently, protectively. They stepped outside together and got into the car. This time Janguk drove himself. The car was silent, neither of them spoke, but every few moments he glanced at her through the rearview mirror. One cocked it once, and her heart skipped a beat. After a short drive, the car stopped in front of a cozy, elegant restaurant. Janguk got out, came around, and opened the door for her. He took her hand again and helped her step out. Slowly, they walked inside. The entire place was empty. It had been reserved just for them. The soft glow of moonlight filtered through the windows, and the lights inside flickered like tiny stars. It felt like a dream, a surreal moment that didn't belong in her reality. Jungkook pulled a chair out for her. She sat down without a word. The world outside ceased to exist. Her heart was pounding. She could feel his heartbeat too, though they were apart. The silence between them vibrated with a quiet electricity. A waiter came and served the meal. Still they said nothing. They just ate. When they were done, Jungkook sat there for a long time, looking as if he was about to say something, yet holding back. Jungkook reached out and placed his hand on her. She looked at him, and gently he kissed the center of her palm. Without a word, he tucked a single red rose behind her ear. Everything feels like it's moving so slowly, just like a dream. Then slowly he raised a hand and cupped her cheek, leaning in, just about to speak. Suddenly his phone rang. He pulled away and answered. His expression changed in an instant. "Ben, sir," came the voice from the other end. The young miss had regained consciousness. Jungkook didn't pause. "Jungkook, I am coming right away," he replied. He stood abruptly and turned to go, but paused at the doorway, remembering her. He turned around. "Jungkook, I will ask the driver to take you home," he said quickly before rushing out into the night. One remained seated. His sudden urgency, the words, "young miss," they said it all. It was her, the children's mother. She had returned. One's heart clenched, her entire body felt hollow, as if the air had been sucked out of the room. She sat down on the floor, knees pulled in, the rose slipped from her ear and fell to the ground. She stared at it, unmoving, unblinking, and in that moment the dream shattered. Everything she felt, everything she allowed herself to hope, crumbled. And Wine realized she may have been living in someone else's story all along.